They've caused Emmanuel Macron, the French president, whose party was absolutely hammered by the far right, to copy what many see as Rishi Sunak's biggest single mistake and call an early general election in France, something that has appalled many of his own supporters and also the mayor of Paris, who wonders how it will affect the Olympic Games. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has also been humiliated by the hard right there. The governor of Bavaria says his government is basically finished. The Prime Minister of Belgium has resigned. This has been a real earthquake. So why might it matter to us? Well, with the Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey today saying in his manifesto he wants to rejoin the single market and ultimately the EU, I think we have to ask how much Britain should want to go into alliance with a Europe increasingly dominated today by hard-right nationalist parties. And then there is the small matter of the Ukraine war. President Putin is watching what is happening in France and across the rest of Europe with open glee. The head of the Duma, the Russian parliament, said earlier today that Scholz and Macron, who've been increasingly vocal in their support for Ukraine, are now clinging on to power with the last of their remaining strength. So even through the hubbub of our own election campaign, this is really big news. And here, partly to discuss it, is the Home Secretary and, of course, also the former Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly. Mr. Cleverly, very good to have you on the show. And can I just start by asking for your thoughts on what it would mean for Britain if the hard right sort of sweep across the European political landscape continues and we actually have people like Marine Le Pen in France and the Alternative for Deutschland in Germany and elsewhere. What does it mean for us?
Well, we are an international country. We have had an internationalist history. We are members of a number of powerful international bodies, NATO, and you know, of course, what happens in Europe has a massive impact on us. I'm very uncomfortable with some of the political direction of travel in Europe, and I've said over and over again, including in a speech I made recently in New York about immigration, that it is incredibly important for sensible, thoughtful governments to make the difficult decisions, because otherwise we run the risk of opening the door to more extremist parties. That is why we have made, I think, sometimes difficult, but always thoughtful decisions here in the UK, which is why the Rwanda plan is so very important, to demonstrate to the British people that we take their concerns about immigration seriously. This is why we're cutting taxes for working people, to show them that we take the cost of living challenges that they've experienced seriously. That is why we're recruiting not just 20,000 officers in the police, but the additional 8,000, again, to demonstrate that we are taking the concerns of British people seriously. If you demonstrate that you're taking people's concerns seriously, I think you can make a credible case for them to vote for you at election time.
And yet something is going on out there, in Nigel Farage's words, right across this part of the world. Incumbent governments of all kinds are having a really, really hard time. And you must look at the polls and think maybe we are as well. And I come back to what you were saying just now on immigration, because it's very interesting. And certainly a lot of these parties are majoring on immigration and illegal migrants as their big theme. And some of them are using very extreme language, particularly about Muslims and Islam. You've said in the past that you don't think a future Labour government, if that's what we get, takes immigration seriously enough. Are you saying, do you believe that if a Starmer government fails to get a grip on the borders, we will see the far right marching through British politics as we're seeing it marching through French and German politics?
Well, I sincerely hope that we don't see the kind of rhetoric that sadly we've seen in some continental European political parties here in the UK. I do fear the Labour government is just completely in the wrong place on immigration. Labour voted over 130 times against measures to strengthen our borders. They've said they're going to scrap the Rwanda plan, even though it is starting to have a deterrent effect, as the Irish government have made clear with some of their concerns about people leaving the UK to go, migrants leaving the UK to go to Ireland.
The numbers coming across the channel are still going up, though, aren't they?
Well, look, we have seen the people smugglers changing their tactics, and let me explain why I'm so frustrated with the Labour Party's position. They've been in opposition for 14 years. Yvette Cooper is a very smart and thoughtful politician, yet their big idea, this kind of
Yeah.
border command, already exists. The small boats operational
Right.
command already exists.
Yes,
And
and
if they're not going to
it's perfectly
if they're
fair
not
of
going
you
to take
to.
it
Yeah.
seriously, no, if they're not going to take it seriously, if their big policy announcement is basically the renaming of a pre-existing organization, that says to me they are not engaging properly on this issue, and they are leaving the door open to
Jay,
the UK's borders, and
okay.
I think that will have a negative effect on our politics.
Now then, to bring us more on the French crisis in particular is Agnès Poirier, the French journalist and broadcaster who has been following the career of Emmanuel Macron for many years. Agnès, very good to have you on the show. I think, looking at your tweeting, you were as surprised as anybody when the president suddenly announced there was going to be a snap French general election.
Yes, I don't think anyone could have predicted, at least now, because I mean, there was always talk that in the autumn, as you know, they were going to be votes about the 2025 budget, it would be difficult again. I mean, don't forget, he was elected president 2 years ago with a minority government, no majority at the National Assembly. The last years have been exhausting for everyone, the MPs and the French public watching a lot of tantrums being thrown in Parliament, and basically very difficult for the government to pass the bills and the laws they were elected for.
Sorry to jump in. I mean, it is a huge gamble for him nonetheless. Do you think he's simply frustrated, he's had enough?
I think there might be an element of that. He might have had enough of his compatriots flirting with disaster, one of our most probably not endearing occupation, but also because he's seizing the initiative, you know. In a few months' time, he would have been obliged. He would have been cornered, obliged to dissolve Parliament. This time he does it. And by the way, I mean, I've read quite, a lot of commentators in the UK saying why those dates, 30th of June for the first round, 7th of July for the second round, well, simply it's not his timing, it's the Constitution's timing, Article 12. As soon as the Parliament is dissolved, elections need to take place between 20 and 40 days. That's why the campaign started today, this morning, and it's only 3 weeks' time.
I remember interviewing Marine Le Pen not that long ago, and I said, what did she really want? It was after Trump's victory, and she said, I want a French revolution. I said, you want a European revolution? She said, no, actually, I want Révolution Mondiale. I want a world revolution. I mean, this is somebody with a very, very hard edge and a very big appetite for disruption. Why do you think that over the past year or two, her party has actually gathered so many more supporters?
Well, I mean, she's for counter-revolution, I would call it. But she's been preparing it not only for the last 2 years. She's been preparing it ever since she arrived in power at the helm of the party created by her father, Jean-Marie. And that was 13 years ago. And I remember spending 2 hours tête-à-tête with her. And I came out of it thinking, OK, in 10 years' time, if she continues like this, she'll be in power. This is what's happening in the sense that she's very unlike her father. She's not obsessed with the Algerian War. She's not obsessed with the Second World War, Marshal Pétain. She's pro-abortion, pro-gay rights. She's born in 1968, twice divorced, and she managed to purge the party from its most louche anti-Semites, etc. It doesn't mean that the party is not fundamentally what it was, but on the surface, she's not frightening anyone anymore.
And she's pretty close to your original timetable. Agnès Poirier, thank you very, very much for talking to me.